Women are bad investments, Sarah. You just need to keep your face pretty until you find a husband to pay your bills. My father looked me dead in the eye and said those words when I put the payroll report on his desk. I had just discovered that my brothers, Austin and Tyler, were making $200,000 a year with full benefits and equity. I was making $50,000 with zero benefits because he had classified me as a 1099 contractor. "Stop whining," he sneered, checking his watch. "I did you a favor. Your brothers are building a legacy. You're just temporary." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt a cold, sharp click in the back of my brain. I realized right then that he wasn't my father anymore. He was just a bad boss. And I knew exactly how to destroy a bad boss using the very contract he forced me to sign. I picked up my bag. "Hey," I said, "if I'm a contractor, then today is my last day." He laughed as I walked out. He thought I was throwing a tantrum. He had no idea I was about to use his own greed to burn his entire empire to the ground. Have you ever been the smartest person in the room, but treated like the coffee girl just because you didn't fit their image? Drop a yes in the comments if you know that feeling. People always ask me why I stayed for 6 years. They look at those payroll numbers, $50,000 versus $200,000, and they ask, "Sarah, you have a degree from Wharton. You're a genius strategist. Why were you letting them treat you like an intern?" It's a fair question, but to understand the answer, you have to understand the ghost producer. In the high-stakes world of New York event production, there are two types of people. There are the face men, like my brothers, Austin and Tyler. They wear $5,000 bespoke suits. They show up at 11 o'clock in the morning holding a latte, ready to take a client to a 3-hour lunch at El Bernardine. They smile, they shake hands, and they promise the moon. And then there are the ghosts. That was me. I was the one on the headset at 3 o'clock in the morning, negotiating with a Teamsters union rep who wanted to shut down a runway show because Austin forgot to file a noise permit. I was the one physically moving 20-pound floral centerpieces in my heels because Tyler had sent the crew home early to save money for his bonus. I was the one who knew the birthday of every major client's child. The one who knew which brides needed handholding and which CEOs needed hard data. I lived in a state of perpetual adrenaline. I remember one night specifically, the launch of a new luxury watch brand at the Hudson Yards. The lighting rig failed an hour before doors opened. Austin was at the bar downstairs flirting with a model. He didn't even answer his phone. I didn't panic. I climbed a ladder in a silk blouse, bypassed the breaker, and rerouted the power from the backup generator. When the lights blazed on, Austin walked in, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Great job, sis. I told the client we'd handle it." He took the credit. He took the commission. I took the subway home because Uber surge pricing was too high for my budget. Looking back, it seems insane, but that's the trap of the good daughter syndrome. My father, Richard, didn't just steal my labor. He stole my ability to assess my own worth. From the time I was a little girl, he trained me to believe that my utility was my rent for existing. "Austin and Tyler are wild," he would say with a wink like their incompetence was charming. "But you, Sarah, you're the reliable one. You're the glue. You made me feel like being the glue was a high honor. You weaponized my own competence against me. I thought suffering was loyalty. I thought that if I just worked hard enough, if I saved them from enough disasters, eventually they would look at me and say, 'We see you. Here is your seat at the table.' I didn't realize then that they weren't waiting for me to prove myself. They were banking on me, never realizing I already had. They didn't want a partner. They wanted a mule." The contractor status wasn't just a financial decision to save 15% on payroll taxes. It was psychological warfare. By denying me benefits, equity, and even a job title, Richard was constantly reinforcing the message. "You are not one of us. You are help. You are temporary." But he made a mistake. He forgot that the help sees everything. While they were busy expensing client dinners and building their personal brands, I was learning every single wire, contract, and vulnerability in the machine they called a company. I was the one building the engine. And when you build the engine, you also know exactly which wire to pull to shut the whole thing down. The end didn't come with a bang. It came with a humiliating apology I didn't owe. 2 days after I found the payroll file, Austin missed a critical deadline. We were producing a launch party for a Japanese tech conglomerate at the MoMA. The deposit for the catering, $75,000, was due at noon. Austin was supposed to wire it. Instead, he was at a strategy lunch that involved 3 bottles of wine. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the catering company called me screaming. They were pulling out. The event was 48 hours away. I marched into Richard's office. "Austin missed the wire," I said. "We're about to lose the caterer." Richard didn't call Austin. He looked at me over his reading glasses and said, "Fix it. I can't fix a missed wire, Dad. The money is gone." "Call them back," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet register. "Tell them it was a clerical error on your end. Tell them you wrote down the wrong routing number. Take the heat off your brother." I stared at him. "You want me to lie to a vendor I've known for 5 years. You want me to look like the incompetent one to protect Austin. Austin is the face of this company, Sarah. Clients need to trust him. You're back of house. It doesn't matter if they think you're a little scattered, just get it done. It doesn't matter if they think you're a little scattered." That was the sentence that broke the camel's back. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my reputation. He was willing to burn my professional credibility to keep his son's suit clean. I made the call. I lied. I took the blame. I listened to the catering director call me unprofessional and a liability. I swallowed it all just like I had swallowed every insult for 6 years. But when I hung up the phone, I walked back into Richard's office with one final request. "I saved the account," I said, "but I want a title change. I want to be named Director of Production. I want it on the website, and I want it on my business card." Richard sighed, rubbing his temples like I was an unruly toddler asking for a pony. "We've talked about this, Sarah. It's an optics issue. Optics. Our clients, they're old school. They like dealing with the men for strategy and you for the details. If I make you a director, it confuses the hierarchy. It makes Austin and Tyler look less authoritative. Let's just keep things as they are. You're good at being the helper." The helper. I looked at the organizational chart on the wall behind him. Austin's photo was there. Tyler's photo was there. Richard's photo was at the top. I wasn't on the wall. Suddenly, the contractor classification made perfect sense. It wasn't just tax evasion. It was erasure. By keeping me off the payroll, off the org chart, and off the equity table, he was ensuring that I never actually existed in the history of Mitchell and Company. I was a ghost. I was designed to be invisible so that when the empire passed to my brothers, nobody would ask, "What about Sarah?" He thought he was erasing me. He didn't realize he was setting me free. If I wasn't an employee, then I didn't owe him 2 weeks' notice. If I wasn't a partner, I didn't have a non-compete clause. And if I wasn't on the org chart, then the work I did wasn't work for hire. It was my work. I looked at Richard one last time. He was already back on his phone, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. He thought he had won. He thought he had put me back in my box. "Okay, Dad," I said softly. "I understand the optics perfectly." I went back to my desk. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I opened a new browser window and searched for the number of the most aggressive intellectual property lawyer in New York City. I wasn't going to be the daughter anymore. It was time to be the shark. The next morning, I didn't go to the office. I walked into the lobby of Sterling and Finch, one of the most expensive intellectual property law firms in Manhattan. I was meeting David, a friend from college who built $800 an hour. I sat across from him in a glass-walled conference room and slid a single piece of paper across the mahogany table. It was the independent contractor agreement Richard had forced me to sign 3 years ago. "Read Clause 4, I said. David adjusted his glasses. He read it once, then he read it again. Then he started laughing. "Sarah," he said, looking up with a grin that was all shark. "Is this a joke? Did he download this template from the internet?" "He wanted to save money on legal fees," I said. "He said lawyers were a waste of overhead." David tapped the paper. "He didn't just save money on legal fees. He saved himself into a grave. You see, under United States copyright law, there is a very specific doctrine called work for hire. If you are a W-2 employee, everything you create, every email, every design, every idea belongs to the company automatically." He leaned forward. "But you aren't an employee. You are a 1099 independent contractor. And in this cheap, generic contract, there is no intellectual property transfer clause. He forgot to make you assign your rights to him." I felt a shiver go down my spine. "So who owns my work?" "You do," David said. "You own the copyright to every stage design, every lighting schematic, and every script you wrote as a contractor. Legally, Mitchell & Company is just renting your intellectual property, and they haven't paid their rent." The miser's paradox. My father was so obsessed with saving 15% on payroll taxes that he had accidentally handed me the keys to his entire kingdom. He wanted to treat me like an outsider to keep me cheap, but in doing so, he made me the owner. "The Titan Gala," I said, "the script, the CAD drawings, the run of show. I wrote all of it last week." "Then you own it," David said. "And we are going to register it right now. We didn't waste time. We filed for expedited copyright registration with the Library of Congress. It cost $800. It was the best money I ever spent, but I knew copyright wasn't enough. Richard was a bully. If I tried to stop him, he would sue me for breach of contract or abandonment. He would try to bury me in legal fees before I ever got to court. I needed an insurance policy. I needed to prove that my sudden departure wasn't abandonment. It was a constructive discharge caused by a hostile work environment. I opened my laptop. I didn't need to hack anything. I just needed to access my own cloud backup. I navigated to a folder labeled voicemails. For 6 years, Richard had left me abusive messages whenever he was stressed. I had never deleted them. I clicked on one from last month. "Sarah, pick up the phone. You're useless. If you don't fix this budget by morning, don't bother coming in. You're lucky I even employ you." I clicked on another. "Stop crying and do your job. You're weak. This is why women can't lead." I transferred 47 audio files to a secure drive and handed it to David. His face went grim as he listened to the first 10 seconds. "This is leverage," he said quietly. "If he tries to sue you, we release these to the board. We release these to the press. He won't just lose the lawsuit. He'll lose his reputation." I walked out of that law firm an hour later. I stopped at a coffee shop and opened the Secretary of State website. It took 10 minutes to file the incorporation papers. SM Productions. It was official. I wasn't the daughter anymore. I was the competition. And I held the deed to the ground my father was standing on. The Titan Gala isn't just a party in New York City. It is the party. It's the night where billionaires shake hands with senators and where production companies like Mitchell & Company make their entire year's revenue in 4 hours. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was dripping in gold. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling. The air smelled like expensive perfume and old money. I stood at the back of the room watching. My father, Richard, was in his element. He was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my car, holding a glass of scotch and holding court near the stage. Austin and Tyler were flanking him like bodyguards, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. They looked relaxed. They looked victorious. They thought I was at home crying into a pint of ice cream, regretting the moment I walked out. They believed they had successfully bullied me into silence. After all, who fights the king in his own castle? They forgot that I built the castle. I didn't walk in through the service entrance this time. I didn't have a headset around my neck or a clipboard in my hand. For 6 years, I had been invisible, dressed in producer black, blending into the shadows so the clients would shine. Not tonight. Tonight, I was wearing red, a structured architectural crimson gown that looked like armor. I walked through the main doors with a ticket I had bought with my own savings. The security guard, a man I had hired 3 years ago, nodded at me. He didn't stop me. He knew who really ran the show. I saw the moment Richard spotted me. He was in the middle of a toast with a senator. His eyes slid over the crowd, landed on the red dress, and stopped. He blinked. For a second, he didn't recognize me. He wasn't used to seeing his daughter as a person. He was used to seeing an asset. Then recognition hit. His smile faltered. He took a step toward me, his face darkening with that familiar, controlling anger. He was going to try to intercept me. He was going to try to drag me outside before I could cause a scene. I didn't stop for him. I turned away and walked straight to the head table, stopping in front of Mr. Vance, the billionaire funding the gala. He valued only competence and contracts. "Sarah," he said, "I thought you left." "I did," I replied calmly, "but not my work." I handed him a thin black folder. My federal copyright registration for the Titan Gala script, lighting, run of show, topped with a court-stamped cease and desist. "The show you're about to watch is stolen," I said. "Mitchell and Company doesn't own it." "I do." He skimmed the papers, noted the highlighted 1099 contractor status, then looked at my father pushing through the crowd in panic. "Is your crew ready?" Vance asked. They never left. He nodded toward the tech booth. The signal was given. Richard arrived breathless. "Get out," he hissed. I smiled. "Take your seat, Dad. The show's starting." The lights dimmed. Richard took the stage, basking before 500 powerful guests. He accepted his award, praised my brothers, then dismissed me as someone who couldn't handle the pressure. The room murmured sympathetically. It was the lie I needed. I nodded to the booth. Feedback shrieked. The massive LED screen glitched, then flashed. Intellectual property of SM Productions. Unauthorized use prohibited. Silence. Ice clinked in glasses. I stepped onto the stage, red dress blazing, microphone steady. Austin didn't design this. Tyler didn't write it. And legally, neither did your company. Richard screamed for my mic to be cut. There wasn't. "They can't," I said. "I hired them." I faced the room. For 6 years, Richard Mitchell refused to pay me a salary. To save $15,000 a year in payroll taxes, he classified me as a 1099 contractor. Lawyers leaned forward. He used a generic contract and forgot one clause: intellectual property transfer. Richard froze. Under United States copyright law, a contractor who doesn't sign away rights owns the work. The stage, the script, the lighting, it's all mine. The realization hit the room at once. "This is my event," I said, "and I'm issuing a cease and desist effective immediately." Mr. Vance stood. "Is this true? Is she a contractor?" Richard stammered. "It was just for taxes." "That's not a technicality," Vance said. "That's incompetence." He turned to me. "You own the show?" "I do." "Then I'm not paying a thief," he said. "Richard, you're fired. Get off the stage. To me, continue the show. Invoice me in the morning." The applause detonated. Richard followed me off stage, grabbing my arm. "I'll make you a partner. I'll give you equity." "It's too late," I said, "for equity and for family." He snarled that I was nothing without him. I smiled coldly. "You're right. I do spend money. I spent it on the best IP lawyer in New York to take back what I built. Keep the change." I walked out with Mr. Vance into the night. The fallout was brutal. The cease and desist triggered an Internal Revenue Service audit for employee misclassification. The fines were catastrophic. Vance moved his $40 million portfolio to SM Productions the next morning. Others followed. Mitchell and Company collapsed within 6 months. Richard still says I stole his legacy. I didn't. I reclaimed unpaid work. The contractor label was meant to chain me. He forgot that a chain swung hard enough becomes a weapon. I am Sarah Mitchell. I am not temporary. I am the owner.